My parents spent my college fund on my brother's fifth DUI and legal bills, then told me to be grateful. I left, built my own life, paid off my debt. Years later, they called saying, send $35,000 for his rehab or he'll die. I went hiking instead. Hey, Reddit! My parents spent years bending the world around my brother and expected me to just deal with the fallout. I finally left and built my own life. Thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Here's how it all started. My name's Kaiser. I'm in my early 30s now, working a steady tech job that pays the bills and leaves me alone. I'm married, have a small house, and live a pretty normal life. But none of it came from where I grew up. My family was the kind you survive, not the kind you lean on. I learned that early. My older brother, Dustin, was the center of everything from as far back as I can remember. He was the kind of kid who could take a normal morning and turn it into a disaster before breakfast. Broken lamps, screaming fits, slammed doors, calls from school. Normal stuff for him. If he wasn't yelling, he was punching holes in walls or fighting someone. If he wasn't fighting, he was lying about something that didn't even need to be lied about. That was just who he was. And my parents, Angela and Jefferson, treated him like he was some fragile, misunderstood genius. Anytime Dustin got in trouble, they acted like the world was picking on him. He's sensitive, Angela would say. People provoke him. Jefferson said it like a warning, as if the rest of us were the problem. Meanwhile, I existed quietly in the background. I didn't need much, didn't ask for much, and apparently that meant I didn't deserve much either. I still remember the first time I noticed the difference. I was 7, and I'd won a small reading award at school. Nothing huge, just a certificate and a little ribbon. I waited by the classroom door while everyone else got picked up. Dustin had thrown a fit at home that morning and smashed a cabinet door, so Angela was dealing with him. When she finally showed up, she rushed past me with that clipped, impatient tone that always meant the same thing. Get in the car, Kaiser. I don't have time today. She never even looked at the ribbon in my hand. Things like that didn't happen once. They happened until it stopped feeling like bad timing and started feeling like a rule. My events became maybes, then afterthoughts, then background noise under whatever Dustin had set on fire that week. If I brought home something I was proud of, I learned to hold it quietly, because showing it too much just made it easier to ignore. After a while, I stopped asking them to come. Not because I didn't care, but because I got tired of watching hope turn into embarrassment. There was one person who noticed. My Uncle Wilson, Jefferson's older brother. He was a mechanic with permanent grease on his hands and a blunt way of talking that didn't leave room for nonsense. When he'd come by, he'd give me a nod and say, "You holding up, kid?" Not in a pity way. More like he genuinely wanted to know. When Dustin would scream at everyone or throw something across the room, Wilson was the only one who told the truth. "Jeff, the boy's out of control," he'd say. "You're not doing him any favors?" Jefferson always brushed him off with some dramatic line about how parenting isn't easy and how people don't understand what we deal with. Angela usually added something like, "Dustin is special, you wouldn't get it." There was one day in particular that stuck. Dustin had gotten into another fight at school, and Jefferson came home raging about lazy teachers. Angela floated behind him like it was tragedy happening to them, instead of consequences from Dustin. I had a certificate from a district-wide math test. I set it on the counter anyway, just to see if they'd look. Jefferson brushed it aside without reading it. Angela didn't even pretend. "Not now, Kaiser. Your brother is going through something serious." Then Dustin walked in bragging about punching a kid, and they laughed. Actually laughed, like it was a funny story. Angela ruffled his hair. Jefferson said, "That's my boy." I picked my certificate up off the floor. That was the moment I understood I wasn't competing with my brother. I was competing with their need to keep lying about him, and I was never going to win. Wilson showed up later that evening. He took one look at the dent in the wall and Angela babying Dustin on the couch and sighed. He followed me into the garage where I was hiding. "Don't let them make you small," he said. "You're not the problem here." I didn't know how to answer that, so I just nodded. But it was the first time an adult ever said it out loud. That something about the way my parents ran the house wasn't normal. That was the version of me they raised. The kid who learned it was better to disappear than compete with the house favorite. By the time Dustin hit his teenage years, our house felt built around chaos. Every month brought a new mess. A call from school, a neighbor at the door, Jefferson pacing the kitchen like the world had targeted his son. What changed wasn't Dustin. It was my parents. They stopped questioning him. They defended him like it was their job. The first time I saw that defense in public was at a family gathering at my aunt's place. Folding tables, paper plates, kids running through the yard. Dustin arrived wound tight. Jefferson kept muttering, Just be cool. Angela watched Dustin like she was waiting for the moment the whole day cracked open. We lasted maybe 20 minutes. A cousin joked about Dustin being grounded again. Dustin snapped. "Say it again!" he barked, stepping in. My cousin laughed awkwardly. "I'm kidding, man." Dustin shoved him anyway. A chair scraped. Drinks spilled. The yard went quiet. My aunt rushed over. "Stop it!" Jefferson moved first, toward my cousin. "Watch your mouth," he snapped. "Don't provoke him." "Provoke him!" my aunt shot back. "He shoved my kid." Angela slid in behind Jefferson, voice already trembling. "Dustin's been dealing with a lot. He doesn't respond well to people mocking him." Mocking, that's what she called it. Uncle Wilson walked over from the grill, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked at Dustin once. "Enough," he said. Dustin scoffed. "Mind your business." "It became my business when you put hands on family," Wilson replied. Jefferson bristled. "He's having a hard time." Wilson didn't blink. "You know what he's having? No consequences." Angela hissed. "Wilson, not here." Wilson nodded like he'd expected it. "Right. Not here. Not anywhere. That's why this keeps happening." Dustin wandered off smirking, and the gathering tried to restart, stiff and strained. Later, my aunt handed me a soda. "How's school, Kaiser?" "It's good," I said. "I'm doing really well." She smiled. "I heard you're top of your class." "That's amazing." Angela appeared immediately. "Kaiser's fine," she said quickly. "He's always been easy." Easy. Like I didn't count. Jefferson nodded toward the yard where Dustin was already arguing again. "Dustin's the one we worry about. He's got real struggles." After that, the years blurred into the same script. Fights, suspensions, stolen stuff, angry phone calls, and my parents blaming teachers, neighbors, cops, anyone who treated Dustin like a person responsible for his choices. Dustin learned he didn't have to change. He just had to wait for them to rewrite the story. My life kept happening on the edge. I had a recognition event for finishing the year at the top of my class. They promised they'd come. Dustin had a situation that afternoon. They didn't show. I accepted the award, walked home, and didn't bring it up. Wilson heard anyway. He stopped by that night and sat at our table like my effort mattered. "You did good," he said. "Don't let their chaos rewrite what you earned." My birthdays came and went the same way. One year they forgot until evening because Dustin had been raging all day. Jefferson shoved cash at me and said we'd celebrate later. We never did. In 8th grade, I tried to say it softly. "It feels like everything is about Dustin." Angela's face hardened. "Don't start, Kaiser." Jefferson didn't look up. "You've got it easy. Be grateful." My 8th grade graduation sealed it. I walked the stage and scanned the folding chairs. They weren't there. They were across town cleaning up Dustin's latest mess. They told me I'd be fine without them. I was. But that was the moment I stopped waiting. By the time Dustin was in high school, I understood my place in that house. He created gravity, and my parents orbited around him like nothing else existed. And I learned to disappear before they pushed me there themselves. It was safer than being seen first. Dustin's 5th DUI arrest happened on a Thursday night, a few weeks after I'd finished high school. The first 4 never stayed DUIs on paper. My parents paid enough lawyers to sand them down into lesser charges and second chances. But this time, he crashed into a parked car, and there were too many witnesses and too much damage for anyone to pretend it was nothing. I was at the kitchen table working through college paperwork when the house phone rang. Angela answered, went silent, then let out a noise like someone had punched the air out of her. She handed the phone to Jefferson with shaking hands. All I heard was, "Again? You've got to be kidding me." Then, "My son wouldn't do that. He wouldn't have that on him." His voice rose until he was nearly shouting. When he finally hung up, Angela was already crying. "They're out to ruin him," she said. "He's not that kind of boy." But the report was clear. Dustin had crashed into a parked car, knocked it halfway up the curb, and when officers approached, they found him slurring, barely able to stand. They also found a small bag in his jacket pocket. The officers listed possession alongside the DUI. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't someone else's jacket. It was Dustin, drunk and carrying something illegal. Jefferson refused to hear it. "Those cops planted it," he said, pacing across the kitchen. "They've been harassing him for years." Angela clung to his arm. "They know he has issues. They take advantage. He's too trusting." I sat there listening to them rewrite reality in real time. They didn't call it what it was. A kid who never faced consequences, finally hitting the point where the system wasn't going to let things slide. By the next morning, the legal bills had already begun. The car Dustin hit belonged to a local business owner, and the damage was significant. There were towing fees, storage fees, and documents piling up about court dates, fines, and mandatory programs. Jefferson threw out numbers like they were nothing. We'll get a lawyer. A real one. Not some public defender trash. Angela nodded quickly, as if speed made it true. We'll figure it out. We always do. That same afternoon, I came home to a big envelope addressed to me. I knew what it was before I opened it. Acceptance. The first real thing I'd ever wanted for myself. I tore it open, read the letter twice, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Excitement. I walked downstairs holding it. I got in, I said. This is good. I can finally start planning. So, can we look at the college fund? The one Grandma and Grandpa set up? The whole room went still. Angela froze completely. Jefferson's face shifted like I'd asked something offensive. He rubbed his forehead and let out a sigh that sounded rehearsed. Kaiser, he said. About that money. What about it? I asked. Angela stepped forward. It's gone. Not all at once. Just bled out over the years in lawyer retainers, court fees, and emergencies they swore were temporary, until there was nothing left. The word didn't land at first. I just stared at her. Gone how? Jefferson snapped. Your brother needed help. Legal bills aren't cheap. We had to protect him. I thought he was joking. You used my college fund on Dustin's arrests? It wasn't your fund, Angela said sharply. It was for the family, and Dustin needed it more. He wouldn't survive prison. I held up the letter. I've been planning for this since middle school. Grandma told me. Angela cut me off. Don't bring her into this. She didn't know what Dustin would go through. So all of it? I asked. Everything they saved for me? Jefferson stepped closer like he was ready to lecture me. You're smart. You'll be fine. You'll get scholarships. You'll work. Real life isn't handed to you. But Dustin gets everything handed to him, I said. Angela's face twisted. Don't talk about your brother like that. You should be proud we kept him safe. Proud. That was the word she used. Proud that they emptied the only safety net I had, because Dustin couldn't stay sober long enough to avoid a felony. Jefferson shook his head like I'd disappointed him. I'm not going to argue. Family steps up. You should want to help. In that moment, something clicked for me. Every ignored birthday, every missed event, every time they told me to be the easy one, it all led here. Dustin didn't just come first. He was the only one who ever counted. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I walked back upstairs, grabbed 2 bags, filled them with what I needed, and came back down. Angela looked at the bags like she couldn't believe it. Where are you going? She asked. Somewhere that isn't here. Kaiser, Jefferson barked. Don't be dramatic. But I was already heading for the door. Outside, Wilson was leaning against his truck, arms crossed, as if he'd been waiting. Someone must have called him, or maybe he just knew how nights like this ended in our family. He looked at the bags, then at me. You're done, huh? Yeah, I said. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a wad of bills, maybe a couple hundred, and pressed it into my hand. Take it. Get yourself set up somewhere. And listen to me, kid. You didn't break this family. He nodded toward the house. They did. I didn't look back when I left. There was nothing worth looking at. I left my parents' house with 2 bags and enough cash from Wilson to cover maybe a week of food. I was 18, which meant I could rent a room, even if I had no idea how to live. I didn't have a plan. I just needed distance. The cheapest place I could find was a shared house on the edge of town. 3 guys I'd never met, all of us renting rooms in a place held together by duct tape and luck. The bathroom door barely closed, the kitchen sink leaked nonstop, and the living room smelled like old takeout. My room was barely wide enough for a mattress and a folding table, but it was mine. I got a job at a gas station within a week. Minimum wage, rotating shifts, and a boss who acted like stocking shelves was rocket science. I didn't complain. It was the first time I felt like my life depended entirely on me. Rent was cheap, but I was still barely making it. Some weeks I'd open my bank app and see single-digit numbers. Overdraft fees became a regular punishment for guessing wrong about what I could afford. Food was simple. Instant noodles, $1 frozen dinners, and whatever was discounted at the end of the week. I took the bus everywhere. Some nights the last bus home wouldn't show, and I'd walk 40 minutes back to the house hoping no one followed me. I learned to stretch every dollar until it snapped. After a few months, I picked up extra shifts at a warehouse, loading trucks, stacking pallets, doing whatever needed doing. It paid a little better, but the work left my back sore and my hands torn up. I'd come home exhausted, wipe the sweat and dust off, and fall asleep as soon as I hit the mattress. The roommates didn't help. One guy ate anything left in the fridge. Another played loud games until 2 in the morning. The third smoked inside even after we all complained. But we all had the same goal: survive the month and pay rent on time. That was enough to keep the peace. Budgeting was something I learned by failing consistently. I'd overspend, then live off peanut butter sandwiches until payday. I'd forget a bill, get hit with a fee, and have to skip a bus pass. It took time and mistakes and quiet frustration, but slowly I started keeping track. A notebook, a cheap calculator, and a strict list taped to the wall. Wilson checked on me every couple of weeks. He'd swing by in his truck, look at my beat-up shoes, and say, "You eating?" I'd nod. He never lectured. He'd hand me tools, show me how to patch something, fix something, or stretch something. When I eventually bought a junky old car for a few $100, he spent an afternoon in the driveway, helping me replace hoses and belts. That car shook at every stoplight, but it got me to work without relying on the bus. After almost a year of scraping by, I started thinking again about school. The acceptance letter had been the one good thing in a storm of bad. I didn't have a college fund anymore, but I still wanted something better than swinging a mop or dragging pallets at 3 in the morning. I applied to community college instead. Cheaper, closer, realistic. I filled out financial aid forms on a borrowed laptop, wrote essays for scholarships, and saved every extra dollar from overtime shifts. When the approval emails came in, it felt like a door opening. I enrolled in a few classes to start. Nothing heavy, just enough to see if I could balance it with work. My days settled into a rough structure. Warehouse at dawn, gas station in the afternoon, class in the evening, then home, study, sleep, repeat. It sounds miserable written out, but it wasn't. It was the first time in my life I had a direction that wasn't dictated by someone else's chaos. Meanwhile, Dustin kept spiraling. I'd hear about him through Wilson or neighbors. More fights, another crash, new charges. Angela and Jefferson never changed their tune. They called me a handful of times, always with the same approach. No greeting, no checking in, just guilt. "Your brother is going through something tough," Angela would say. "You should come home and help," Jefferson added. Help what? Calm him down? Pay something? Sit in the background while they pretended he was fine? I stopped answering eventually. If I picked up, the conversation was always about Dustin. If I didn't, they sent long texts about how I was abandoning the family. They never asked how I was doing. Not once. But I didn't need them anymore. That was the difference. With work and school, things slowly steadied. I paid rent on time. I learned to cook real meals. Rice, eggs, vegetables from the discount shelf. I fixed my own car, learned how to manage bills, figured out which expenses mattered and which didn't. I didn't have much, but I didn't owe anyone anything either. There were nights I sat at my cramped desk, textbooks open, the house loud and chaotic around me, and I realized something I'd never felt growing up. I was building something. Tiny, rough, unstable, but mine. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to survive someone else's mess. I was finally building my own life, one shift and one class at a time. Finishing community college took longer than the standard 2 years because I worked through all of it, but I eventually walked out with an associate degree and a transcript I was proud of. I transferred to a 4-year university after that. It wasn't a big-name school, but it was solid, affordable, and close enough that I could keep working part-time shifts at the warehouse and weekends at the gas station. My schedule looked ridiculous on paper, but I knew how to push through long days by then. Wilson kept checking in, showing up whenever I needed help with something practical. Car repairs, moving apartments, even small stuff like replacing a busted lock. He never made a big deal of it. He'd hand me a tool and say, "Figure it out," then step back and let me learn. It was the only version of parenting I'd ever seen that involved actually teaching someone anything. My last year at the university was when I met Ruby. I was working at the front desk of a campus building during extra hours they offered for students who needed money. She came in one evening asking where a specific lecture hall was, and I pointed her in the right direction. She paused before walking off and said, "You look exhausted. Long day?" It wasn't rude. She just had this way of looking at you that made lying pointless. I laughed and said something like, "Long month." We kept running into each other. She'd study in the same building, bring an extra coffee and hand it to me without asking if I wanted one. We started talking between my shifts. Nothing intense, just easy, normal conversations. That alone felt strange. I wasn't used to someone being curious about me without wanting something. Once she found out I was working 2 jobs and going to school full-time, she didn't act impressed or pity me. She said, "You know you don't have to downplay that, right?" It was the first time someone called me out for brushing off my own effort. After graduation, I got my first full-time job in a mid-sized IT department for a manufacturing company. The pay wasn't amazing, but it was consistent, with health insurance and actual weekends. I texted Wilson the news, and he replied, "Good. Now you can finally stop buying garbage tools." It was his version of congratulations. Ruby and I started dating more seriously around then. She helped me plan a budget that didn't rely on last-minute scrambling. She made me apply for roles I thought I wasn't qualified for. When I doubted myself, she didn't sugarcoat anything. "You've done harder things than interview for a job," she'd say. "Stop selling yourself short." No one had ever said something like that to me in a straightforward way. We moved in together the next year. It wasn't some grand decision. We were already spending most of our time together, and splitting rent made financial sense. She helped me organize my paperwork, set up auto-pay for bills, and restructure my student loans in a way that didn't feel like drowning. I handled the repairs, the cooking, the errands. It worked. Eventually, I proposed. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet evening at home, a ring I'd saved for, and a moment that felt right. She looked at the ring and smiled. "Took you long enough?" With 2 incomes and careful saving, we were able to buy a modest starter home. It wasn't fancy. Older siding, worn carpet, small yard, but it was ours. We spent weekends painting walls and replacing light fixtures. Ruby set up her little reading corner. I set up a small workstation in the spare room. Wilson came by with a toolbox and helped us fix a loose railing, then stayed for dinner. Wilson came by the first week. "You bought a house with loose railings and a crooked porch light," he said. "Good. Means you didn't overpay." Ruby laughed. Translation: "He's proud of us." Wilson grunted. "Sure, that too." Throughout all this, I kept paying my student loans steadily. Every month, the balance dropped a little more. Ruby celebrated the wins with me, no matter how small. When I finally made the last payment, I didn't expect it to hit as hard as it did. Ruby baked a simple cake with "debt-free" written in slightly crooked icing. We sat at our kitchen table eating cake straight from the pan, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I'd reached solid ground. Around this time, Angela and Jefferson started resurfacing. The tone of their messages was noticeably different. Overly polite, overly cheerful, like they were trying too hard. "We're so proud of you, Kaiser," Angela wrote. "You've built such a nice life." Jefferson sent a text asking if I wanted to come by sometime soon. They didn't mention Dustin, which was the biggest red flag. Anytime my parents avoided talking about him, it meant something was wrong. Ruby looked at their messages and said, "They want something." She wasn't wrong. My parents had never contacted me just to check in. The friendliness wasn't warmth. It was bait. I didn't know what the hook was yet, but I could feel it coming. Still, no matter what was waiting, it didn't shake me. I had a degree, a steady job, a home, a marriage that actually felt like partnership, and the one person who'd always been honest with me, Wilson, still in my corner. For the first time in my life, I had a foundation built entirely by my own hands, and they had nothing to do with it. The call came on a random Tuesday evening, right when Ruby and I were finishing dinner. My phone buzzed, and I saw Mom on the screen. I hadn't heard her voice in years. Ruby raised an eyebrow. "You gonna answer?" "Yeah," I said. "Let's see what they want." Angela didn't even say hello. "Kaiser, it's your brother," she blurted out. Her voice was sharp, frantic. "He needs help again. It's serious this time." Before I could reply, Jefferson's voice cut through the background. "Tell him to stop dragging his feet. We don't have time for this." I stepped into the hallway. "What's going on?" Angela sniffled loudly, the kind of cry she used when she wanted something. "Dustin is struggling. He's been through so much lately." "That's not an answer," I said. Jefferson grabbed the phone. "Listen, Kaiser, there's a facility. Real good place, 12-month program. Costs $35,000. We need you to cover it." I laughed once quietly. "Why would you think I'd do that?" "Because you can," Jefferson snapped. "You've got a house, a good job, a stable life. You owe it to your family." "Are we?" I said. "To who? For what?" "To us," Angela said, her voice suddenly appearing again. "We raised you. We supported you. Your life turned out well because we gave you structure." I stared at the wall. "Structure?" "Yes," she said. "We made sacrifices." "For Dustin," I corrected. She didn't acknowledge it. "Family helps family, Kaiser." "You didn't help me," I said. "Not once." Jefferson's tone shifted from entitled to irritated. "Don't start rewriting history. You're doing well now. You can afford to help your brother. $35,000 is not help. That's a bailout. He needs you," Angela pleaded. "He won't survive without treatment." Right then, I heard my phone buzz with notifications. Voicemails from Dustin, one after another. Angela kept talking. "If you don't step up, he could hurt himself." Before I answered, I listened to one of Dustin's messages. "Kaiser, man, just help me, dude. You don't get it. Everything sucks right now. Mom and Dad said you would help. Come on." Don't leave me like this. A second message. You think you're better than me? You're not. You had everything handed to you. I should have gotten that money, not you. A third. I swear I'll do something stupid if no one helps me. Is that what you want? Is it? It was chaos. Begging, blaming, threatening, all mixed together. Typical Dustin. I put the phone back to my ear. I'm not paying for rehab. Angela gasped as if I'd confessed to a crime. How could you say that? He's your brother. Jefferson started raising his voice. You selfish little... After everything we did for you, this is how you repay us? What exactly did you do for me? I asked. Name one thing. Long silence. Then Jefferson exploded. You think you got where you are without us? You think you built that life alone? We gave you a foundation. No, I cut in. Wilson gave me a foundation. I built everything else myself. Angela broke completely. Her voice went high and shaky. You've turned cold. Ruby changed you. You used to be sweet. You used to care about this family. Jefferson added, he wouldn't talk like this if she didn't poison him. Ruby overheard that from the kitchen and muttered, wow, charming. I kept my voice steady. I'm hanging up now. You walk away from this, Jefferson warned, and you're no son of mine. You made that decision years ago, I said, and ended the call. Dustin's voicemails kept coming, long, erratic messages, shifting between sobbing, yelling, blaming, and rambling apologies. I blocked him. Then I blocked Angela and Jefferson. Ruby sat beside me on the couch. You okay? Yeah, I said. Just tired of the same cycle. The next morning, my extended family had exploded. I woke up to messages, group chats, and Facebook notifications full of guilt and accusations. How could you abandon your brother? Your parents sacrificed so much. You're heartless. You think you're better than the rest of us now? None of these people had lifted a finger for me growing up. None of them had shown up during my years of scraping by. But they had plenty to say now. So I wrote one email, a long one. I listed every rehab, every arrest, every bill. Every time my parents had used Dustin as an excuse to neglect me. I included how they drained my college fund, how I worked 2 jobs to survive, how they'd never once asked how I was doing. I ended it with one sentence. If you believe in helping Dustin so much, the rehab needs $35,000. There were about 15 of you blowing up my phone, so split it up, and it's about $2,300 each. I hit send. Not one person replied offering money. What I did get were messages like, you're cruel. You're embarrassing the family. You're twisted for putting money over blood. I blocked all of them too. Later that night, Ruby slid a cup of tea in front of me. Wilson called, she said. He said you did the right thing. I nodded. Good. The storm didn't quiet down for days. Dustin kept creating new accounts to message me. Angela and Jefferson tried calling from different numbers. Relatives tried posting vague complaints online. Chaos followed them everywhere, no matter how far I'd gone. But for the first time, I didn't feel pulled into it. I didn't owe them anything. I didn't have to get swallowed by their disaster again. Their crisis wasn't my responsibility anymore. Dustin overdosed 9 months after that final phone call. No buildup, no dramatic warning, just a message from an unknown number early in the morning. This is Officer Harris. We need to inform you your brother, Dustin, was found deceased. The rest blurred into formal language and logistical details. I thanked him, hung up, and sat quietly on the edge of the bed. Ruby walked in, hair still messy from sleep. What happened? Dustin, I said. He's gone. She sat beside me without asking anything else. There wasn't much to say anyway. His life had been one long collision course, and nothing about the ending surprised me. Sad, yes. Shocking, no. Angela didn't call. Jefferson didn't either. Not that I expected them to. They were probably too busy trying to figure out who to blame this time. I got a forwarded funeral notice from a cousin I barely remembered. Ruby read it over my shoulder. You going? She asked. No. She nodded like she'd expected that answer. Instead of putting on black clothes and standing through speeches about a version of Dustin that never existed, Ruby and I drove out to a hiking trail about an hour from our house. The weather was clear, cool, quiet. The kind of day that didn't match the weight of what happened, which somehow made it feel more honest. We walked for miles. No big conversation, no dramatic reflections, just the sound of leaves under our shoes and the occasional bird overhead. Somewhere along the ridge, Ruby stopped and looked at me. You all right? I don't know, I said, but this feels better than pretending we were close. She took my hand. You gave enough to that family. This moment is yours. The hike wasn't symbolic because I planned it that way. It was symbolic because it wasn't about anyone else for the first time. No guilt, no pressure, no fixing, no rescuing. just breathing. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I didn't need it saved to know who it was. Angela and Jefferson had tried calling from different phones before. Ruby looked at me, silently asking if I wanted to answer. "I'll deal with it now," I said. I stepped outside and picked up. Jefferson didn't say hello. "You didn't come," he said, voice strained. "No," I replied. "He was your brother. He was also your responsibility, not mine." A long pause, then a shaky exhale. "We lost him, Kaiser." "You lost him a long time ago," I said. "This is just the end of the same story." Angela took the phone then, her voice thick and hoarse. "We tried everything. You don't understand how hard it was." "I understand more than you think," I said. She inhaled sharply. "How could you not come?" "Because I stopped being part of that world a long time ago." She didn't argue. She didn't yell. She just breathed unevenly, like she wanted to say something but couldn't put it into words. I ended the call first. 2 weeks after the funeral, the fallout began. I heard bits and pieces from extended relatives. Angela and Jefferson fought with nearly everyone. Jefferson blew up at Dustin's old friends for influencing him. Angela accused the rehab center of turning them away years ago. Never mind that Dustin refused to go half the time. They burned bridges with neighbors, relatives, even people who tried to comfort them. Grief mixed with their lifelong denial created a storm no one wanted near them. The financial damage caught up next. The house had been remortgaged twice. Credit cards maxed out. Old legal debts resurfaced. They couldn't keep up. Eventually, they lost the house entirely. Someone sent Ruby a link to the auction listing. We didn't click on it. During all this, Wilson kept in touch, more frequently than usual. He came by one weekend with a pizza and set the box on the counter. "You hear about your folks?" he asked. "Bits and pieces. They're not taking anything well. But that's not on you." "I know." He studied me for a second. "You did right by your own life, Kaiser. Not many people climb out of what you climbed out of." I nodded. "Thanks, Wilson." He wasn't a man who said big emotional things often, but before he left, he put a hand on my shoulder. "I'm proud of you," in case no one ever said that. That stayed with me longer than anything my parents had ever said. A month later, Ruby found an envelope in our mailbox with no return address. Inside was a letter from Angela and Jefferson, written in shaky handwriting. I read it standing in the kitchen. "Kaiser, we failed Dustin. We failed you. We made choices we thought were right, and they ended up hurting both our sons. We're sorry. We don't expect forgiveness, but we hope someday you'll understand we tried." Mom and Dad Ruby watched my expression. "Anything you want to say back?" "No," I said. "There's nothing to respond to." "You feel okay?" "I feel nothing. Not anger, not relief, not forgiveness, just distance. A flat, steady distance that wasn't cold. Just final." People assume closure is some big emotional shift, like a weightlifting. But closure isn't a door locking shut. It's realizing the door doesn't matter anymore. My parents were part of my life once. Now they weren't. The tragedy was theirs. The consequences were theirs. The regrets were theirs. My life, the one they never helped build, was still standing. Later that evening, Ruby and I sat on the porch with the lights off, just listening to cars pass in the distance. She leaned against me. "You did everything you could," she said. "I did everything that was mine to do," I replied. Peace doesn't come from fixing the past. It comes from finally stepping out of it. And I had. Completely. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.